Now it's 8 months, and I'm not getting a response. I have personally attempted to collaborate with district leaders regarding the racial disparities and concerns affecting Black children and their peers. I initially communicated these concerns to former Superintendent Larry Huff.
A while back, I talked to Rod Robertson, and he said basically it was not in his wheelhouse. And I think it's really important that I know there's someone that possibly run for mayor that was present in this parent coalition. And as soon as I threatened him that I would call or talk, he called me within like 2 hours. I went to school with him. I don't care.
In 2022, our own daughter experienced her trauma and bullying incidents at her own school, which ultimately got so bad that she ended up taking her own life. For a lot of parents, sometimes that comes with a lot of shame and guilt. For us, it was just anger. And
that's a problem. They should absolutely have something to do with it because they are working with your kid. You are trusting them with your child.
So you are 129% correct that we hold teachers and the institution accountable to do better. Level of accountability, I bet they hold you accountable, don't they? If you get out of your seat in class, what's gonna happen? You're gonna get in trouble, right? It's something simple. But we can't hold institutions accountable. They need to be held accountable too.
This is not, we're not just looking at the district level like the people in administration. Our principals, our teachers, they'll be like, that's above my pay grade, but they are absolutely a part of this. They are working directly with our children. Do not let them tell you that this is above their pay grade.
Entrusting all of these people with our children, right? And so that is a scary piece of this, to be like, oh, I'm supposed to entrust you with my child's life when we have this level of evidence and abuse of power that is happening. I do want to add on to that because a lot of times people try and
last, December, January, and more recently I raised the concerns to the new superintendent since she got there. The second week I was in her email box. And it took her 4 months to write me back. Why? Why are we allowing that to happen? That's unacceptable. They're not following their own board ethics. Issue. So Black children are not a statistic. Brown children are not a statistic. Children with disabilities are not statistics. Poor kids should not be statistics. Immigrant children should not be statistics. They are children. They deserve institutions willing to examine themselves with the same level of accountability. I bet they hold you accountable, don't they? If you get out of your seat in class, what's gonna happen? You're gonna get in trouble, right? It's something simple. But we can't hold institutions accountable. They need to be held accountable too.
Others get bullied, others are treated unfairly, and no one does anything to fight against it at school. Schools only care about what the sport and academics look like. Schools only care about what the sport and academics look like. So when people ask, the school looks good.
families and community members are informed before our students return to school. We want families to understand the concerns affecting our children's safety, mental health, education, well-being, and their futures, and to have access to the evidence, data, lived experiences, resources, and community-led solutions they need to recognize warning signs, understand their rights, ask informed questions, seek support, and effectively advocate for their children. Throughout the evening, we will share youth and parent experiences. We will look at Elkhart County's school to prison pipeline and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, that's also referred to as OJJDP. Concerns involving transparency and accountability, and community-led solutions to better protect our children and support families. We will also introduce the Indiana Child Safety Campaign and officially launch our Speak Up Indiana project, which is a statewide parent and community-led community witness and accountability project created to amplify the voices and lived experiences of Indiana's children, youth, and families. Tonight's press conference will be streamed live through the Speak Our Truth Project Facebook page and by local activist and truth teller Felix Antonio, right here. And then local activist Ernest Davis will also be, he's waving in the back, he will be posting videos of these recordings like throughout the week for folks that may have missed it. And so tonight, y'all, we stand united and we lead with our hearts. And when we lead with our hearts, the truth wins every time. And so tonight, if you're not familiar, these are faces from our community. These are faces of children that we have lost because of bullying or community violence. And in each of these instances, they could have been prevented. And so they're a reminder of why we're here, why we will forever remember their faces and their names. And I want to give a special tribute tonight to a dear friend and mother that we lost unexpectedly, Keisha Jacobs. Keisha is a fierce advocate from South Bend, and we have been working with Keisha for the last year, but she has been a fierce mother in this work since 2017 when her son Abdul was killed due to gun violence. And he was a 15-year-old boy that was just visiting out of town and was in the crossfire of gun violence that had nothing to do with him. And since that time, Keisha has been fighting, and I mean fighting for reform, for change, for child safety. And so we met her a year ago after she had already been on this journey for some time. And Keisha, folks that knew her, she pulled you in right away because she led with her heart and she led with her truth. And you felt it. And for a long time, she shared that she felt alone in this fight, that she felt unheard. And we lost Keisha to suicide, which really shook us because anyone that knows Keisha knows that that was the loudest statement she could have made. Keisha was anti-gun violence. Keisha would actually get bullets off the street and fill them and get guns off the streets. And so for her to die in this way, it speaks volumes to all of us and those that knew her, and we will always honor her truth. And as difficult as that may be, it's important for us to lean into the truth even when it's uncomfortable. And that's part of the reason that we're here tonight, is because there's a lot of truths in our community that have been silenced and suppressed by the quote-unquote leaders and powers that be, we often refer to as the powers that don't. Because you will learn tonight an underbelly that a lot of folks in our community don't talk about openly, but we have learned through horrific tragedy, y'all, and the truth of our children, that we have to talk about the things that are uncomfortable. We have to talk about the dark underbelly and shed light into these places in order to truly protect our children. And so before we get started, to just lean into our hearts, that we could all just maybe put your hand on your heart and take some deep breaths together and breathe into our heart space and the truth of why we're here and the heart of why we're here. I want y'all to know this is very informal because we are just parents. Many of us that were brought to this platform were brought here trying to protect our own children. And so we're in no way pros at this. We're here because our children matter, and we've learned that we have to speak in order for there to be change. And so to start us off tonight, I am very grateful to introduce you to a local parent and child advocate and activist, Tiana Batiste. She's the founder of Jack's Aspire Foundation, and she's going to be sharing on Elkhart County's juvenile justice, the OJJDP grant that we discussed. And then also, just so y'all know, on these seats, the yellow flyer that says Elkhart County OJJDP, if you scan that code, that also gives you direct access to all of the data, so you can view it and really go through it yourself, because there's a lot there. And so I will go ahead and hand it off to Tiana now.
Okay, I'm not gonna use the mic. I think I can talk loud enough and the mic will kind of be the backup. Is that okay? Yeah. All right, cool. So, as Rachel already spoke to, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Tiana Batiste, and I am the Executive Director of Jack's Aspire Foundation, a parent and child advocacy that was founded in 2022. Our core mission is to support parents and guardians as they navigate the American schooling institution and work to break down institutional barriers. The reason why I started my foundation is because, like Rachel already spoke to, because of parents. There were a lot of parents that I experienced in my career that were struggling with the institution of education. And as I was getting pushed out as an administrator inside trying to fight for children that look like you all here in the front, I got pushed out, and I still wanted to be able to support parents navigate the system. And so that's what Jack's Aspire stands for. So for that reason, Jack's Aspire Foundation strongly urges individuals, organizations, institutions, and community leaders to align themselves with the Indiana Child Safety Campaign, our grassroots movement calling Indiana to make the safety and well-being of children its highest priority. Here in Elkhart County, and as Rachel spoke to, I'm going to be speaking to the data, the ODTJPP, I don't care what it's called. Who cares what it's called? I'm going to be speaking to that data, and I'm also going to be speaking to the state data, and I'm just going to be speaking to just data overall because I'm an educator. My background is education. I've been in it for 30 years almost. So kind of I'm going to give us like a bird's eye view of what's going on with our youth. So here in Elkhart County, 7 public school corporations, private schools, and charter schools collectively serve thousands of children and families. With that responsibility comes tremendous influence. So we're talking specifically about ECS, you know, and the experience that many of us are having with ECS. But remember, this entire county serves students in varying forms. There's lots of different schools here in the school system that are responsible for that data that's in that report that you can scan. Here in Elkhart, again, like I said, there's several different types of school systems with tremendous influence. And the one thing that we have to remember as you all and we all begin to community organize is where the power actually, where it resides. A lot of time, there's a lot of myths on Facebook, people are talking about it in the media, and they place power in places where really that's not where the power is to make a difference, okay? And so as we continue to organize around this work to get safety for the children, we have to remember that the power lies in the institutions that we're trying to uphold. And there's actually research out there that proves this to be true. There's a researcher, his name is John Hattie, and his work is basically around what happens inside schools matter. And he can support that the decisions educators and school leaders make every day, including instructional practices, expectations, a lot of stuff that we're talking about today is relational, school climate, and responses to what happens to students and their behavior, and that responses to student behavior shows up in that report. What's it called? OD what? What's it called? Say it again. Okay, so when you look at it later, these things that are happening in that report, most of that power resides in the institution, not at home in my house and on my couch, right? I'm a parent, but for some reason the myth is that parents are the problem. No, the research shows that the power is in the institution. So as I continue, There's a 2026 Indiana Kids Count data book that's also very, very significant to the ODJP report. And it emphasizes the importance of examining the intersectionalities of Indiana's youth population. Its disaggregated data draws attention to disproportionate and disparate. Those are two key words. Can you repeat it after me? Disproportionate. Disproportionate. And disparate. Disparate. Okay, disparity is, say, like you have 7 black children, but for some reason, when it comes to the suspensions, 40% of those suspensions go to all 7 of those kids. That's a disproportionality. That's a huge 7 from 40, and you got to play with data a little bit different than that, but it's still a disproportionality. Okay, disparity means that you might have, maybe you have 5 white students and 7 black kids, and then there's still the 7 black kids are still getting suspended at just about a 10 to 15% higher rate. That's a disparity. But when you start getting into 20, 30, 40 percentage points higher, that's a disproportionality. Okay, so that's why they have both of those words in there in this report. And it's important to understand that because the numbers are very, very significant and the youth are being impacted by these disproportionalities. And so the data draws attention to these disproportionate and disparate outcomes, and this is who it's affecting. It's affecting historically marginalized youth. So students, kids that have already been marginalized, maybe in the 30s, in the 40s, in the 50s. You guys understand what I'm saying, right? 1940s, the same people that were being marginalized back then, here we are in 2026 and they're still being marginalized, okay? And those kids are kids that are included with racial and ethnic minorities, so brown and black students, we like to say, students with low income, poor kids, LGBTQ plus youth, and youth with disabilities and immigrant youth. Those are the historically marginalized groups, and here we are in 2026 still dealing with that. And so the report demonstrates, and again, I'm only talking about the Indiana Kids Count. I'm not even on the one that Rachel spoke to yet. So this is other data that we have that proves in Indiana that we have issues. The report also demonstrates that Indiana's children are increasingly diverse. Okay, so our kids are increasingly diverse. Our population is getting more diverse. In 2023, more than 1.59 million children under the age 18 lived in Indiana. And 33.4% of the Hoosier youth were a race or ethnicity other than white, non-Hispanic, compared to 22% of adults. I'm going to read that again. It said again that there's 1.59 million kids, and here in Indiana, 33% of Hoosier youth were a race or ethnicity other than white. So a third of the kids are black. That's what it's saying in the whole state. Okay? It says what does it say again? Race or ethnicity other than white, non-Hispanic. So a third of our children are a black race compared to 22% of adults. So the changing demographics reality matters. Elkhart and the surrounding county are part of an increasingly diverse communities. As our communities become more diverse, our institutions must become more equipped, not less, to ensure that children are treated fairly regardless of whether they are black, brown, poor, LGBTQ plus, disabled, immigrants, or members of another historically marginalized population. Yet the disparities documented in our own county deemed our attention. So here's the data from Elkhart County where we are. And this is a general summary. It's not specific, except for one fact. I'm always going to talk about the core, okay? So the 2025 Elkhart County Tenured Site System Assessment, conducted with a focus on improving the county's youth justice system, identified recommendations intended to promote greater equity and reduce the number of young people entering the justice system. So the intent of this grant, this money coming here to Elkhart, the intent of these people, their job is to get the data so we can tell the system what's wrong to make it better. That's the intent, okay? So that's that purpose that I was reading. The assessment also identified significant concerns involving racial and ethnic disparities and the stewardship of agencies responsible for serving young people. So as they did the data, they did the studies, they got the recommendations, again, they noticed that there were significant concerns across racial and ethnic disparities. So they looked at like 4 or 5 different areas, and in every area, race and ethnicity came up. And then also what came up was the lack of moral stewardship. You guys know what a boat is, right? A yacht. I love yachts. The ones in Chicago, going through the city, I think they're so cool. And every time I hear the word stewardship, I think of a person stewarding the boat. That's what I always go back to in my head. I don't know why. But these people that are stewarding this boat, they're running into those buildings in Chicago. Do you understand? That's how messed up our education system is. They're not stewarding and staying off of the side of the buildings, right? Their stewardship is off. And so again, that's what they found in this report. One of the participants reportedly observed that the same data was repeatedly being presented at meetings. So these are people telling their stories, their testimonies in this report. These people that work whatever agency they're in is saying that the same data was repeatedly being presented at meetings without being meaningfully used to establish priorities or move the work forward. So again, why did we do the grant then? Why did y'all bring your money here if we're not going to act on it? You know what I'm saying? Why? Even more troubling, stakeholders reportedly expressed, and this is somebody else, a stakeholder. So this is somebody in Elkhart. This is their voice. Even more troubling, stakeholders reportedly expressed frustration that insufficient action was being taken to address racial and ethnic disparities despite data showing that youth of color were being detained at higher rates than white youth. We have lived for 600 years and have been afraid to talk about black and white in our country. And now guess who's suffering because of that? The kids. This is a stakeholder mad that these people in power won't do something about this racism. I've been in it for 30 years. I was in the institution. South Bend schools, they struggle too. And this is where the numbers become impossible to ignore. According to the assessment, I'm still in that same report that you have access to. Black children represented and this is what I was giving you as an example earlier, but I'm going to say it again now, and I'm sorry about my squirrel moments, guys. Black children represented approximately 7% of the county's youth population, yet accounted for approximately 41% of detained youth. 7% of the kids in this county are black. Why is 40% of them being locked up? Or why is 40% of the lockups black kids? See, you got to be careful with data. Okay? But 7% of the kids are black, but yet 40% of them lockups are represented by them 7% of black kids. What were those 2 words I had you say? Disproportionate and there's 2. It's not just one, it's dual. You talked about dualities. It's both. Normally back in the day when I first came on board, it was just disparities. But as my career continued to grow, disproportionate disparities started to come. So now it's like double generational poverty. Like kids can't even get out of poverty no more. Like they will be able to go to school and get out of poverty. It's hard to do that now for them because of these institutions and how they're functioning, how they're driving that boat in Chicago. I'm serious, y'all gotta go there. It's really cool. Okay, I promise you, it's really cool. Okay? All right, y'all, I'm sorry, I'm almost done. I timed myself. It was 8 minutes. Okay, here we go. So somebody's talking about they're tired of the fact that people won't address it. The assessment described a perception among stakeholders that there was resistance to discussing those disparities and giving them action they required. So people were resistant. And we're experiencing that as coalitions. We're trying to talk to these powers that be, and they're being resistant. And that's still showing up. So the questions, you have to start asking questions. Why do these racial disparities of this magnitude persist within systems that are entrusted to educating our children, protecting our children, supporting them and developing them, why do they have disparities? They're supposed to be the model for society. You know? So why do these community members who we raise concerns and they ignore us? Why does discussing race and racism remain so difficult when the data itself demands that race be paid attention to? Our young people interact every day with systems entrusted with their education, safety, mental health, development, and futures. Schools in particular assume extraordinary responsibility for children while those children are in their care. The relationship adults establish with young people matter. So kids should be able to have at least one adult that they trust at school, at least one person. And they really should have a lot more. But us adults should be guiding our children. Expectations matter, discipline decisions matter, access to opportunities matter, where their children feel respected, valued, and protected, and believed matters. And when dysfunction and unresolved bias, historical bias lives, that's what's happening right now. The same bias that our country was founded on, it is still living today, and it's showing up in our schools. And inequitable practices exist among adults and institutions. Children can ultimately experience the consequences, and that's what's happening. So me, what have I done as the executive director, as an advocate for families within Elkhart schools? This is what I've done over the last, now it's 8 months, and I'm not getting a response. I have personally attempted to collaborate with district leaders regarding the racial disparities and concerns affecting Black children and their peers. I initially communicated these concerns to former Superintendent Larry Huff. This was last, December, January. And more recently, I raised the concerns to the new superintendent since she got there. The second week, I was in her email box. And it took her 4 months to write me back. Why? Why are we allowing that to happen? That's unacceptable. They're not following their own board ethics. So this can't happen. The time is now to have courage, transparency, and the time has come for institutions, and this is really the core. And I'm probably the only person talking about the core right now, probably across the whole region. But it's time that we examine our own practices, relationships, policies, disciplinary systems, cultures, and outcomes. And the time has come to address racial bias directly when the evidence demonstrates the disparities. When you go home and look at that, you're going to read people talk about race. When you go to the IYI, Indiana Youth Institute, talk about race. If you do your own FOIA request on the district and ask for the data, you're going to see race is always an issue. So Black children are not a statistic. Brown children are not a statistic. Children with disabilities are not statistics. Poor kids should not be statistics. Immigrant children should not be statistics. They are children. They deserve institutions willing to examine themselves with the same level of accountability. I bet they hold you accountable, don't they? If you get out of your scene class, what's going to happen? You're going to get in trouble, right? It's something simple. But we can't hold institutions accountable. They need to be held accountable too, to the rules. And this is how I'm going to end. Black is the core. It's always been the core. Okay, it's always been the core of everything that we're dealing with in this latter day of the Civil War and the Industrial Revolution that we're all in right now. Okay, that's deep, what I just said. But Black itself is a color containing extraordinary depth and complexity. It can represent power, excellent elegance, sophistication, formality, grief, mystery, rebellion, fear, resilience, and strength. It is not one thing, and neither are Black children. Our children carry the full spectrum of humanity within them, and they deserve systems capable of seeing that humanity. Until we have the courage to confront race and racism, where the data demonstrates, and I want to pause because I knew Takesha too, and I knew her son, that was one of my students, and actually my first student that I lost to gun violence. And since his passing, I've lost another probably 30 in my career. I've lost a lot of kids in my career. But Takesha spoke to the truth that I'm speaking to right now. I did a podcast with her on my platform. She was episode number 6 or 7. And at the very end of her episode, she talks about this core blackness and how institutions just don't see us. And I want to remind everybody in this room that all colors come from black. So when you address the core, you all too will benefit from that. It's not we're going to leave you out. You ain't never been left out. But we got to get to the core. Our country is going, the whole world is going to perish. Scientists are saying that. That is not my opinion. So she spoke to this on my podcast. Until we have the courage to confront race and racism, where the data demonstrates disparities, and until institutional leaders are willing to examine how bias may influence school culture, relationships, discipline, access, opportunity, and achievement, we should not expect different outcomes. If we don't ever address racism, y'all just keep going. Just go on and do it. Go book your next vacation, enjoy your life. Because it ain't going to change. It's not going to change. The reports have documented the disparities. The community has raised the concerns. The children are experiencing the outcomes. I got one more boy left in this institution. I can't wait till he gets out. Now the question is whether the adults and the institutions will, with the power to change these outcomes, will have the courage to act. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
And our data shows that significantly, as Tiana touched on, and I think it's important when you dive into this data as well, is the data clearly shows points of discrimination in this process. So it looks at how a child moves through a system, right? Point of referral till the outcome. And this data clearly shows that there is bias and discrimination at point of referral, which is the schools and the police, and at point of sentencing. And the majority of these referrals for detainment, for actually putting children in the juvenile facility, are coming from Elkhart schools. So what's important to correlate here is that behaviors, as she touched on, are leading to this happening. Schools not addressing behaviors are what are leading to this pipeline, right? And so for those of you that aren't familiar, Rio was a kiddo from our community that went to Northside. And Rio was horribly bullied at school. Everyone knew, the student body knew, the teachers knew, the administration knew, the board knew, and they did nothing. And because they did nothing, Rio died by suicide on March 14 of 2022. Thereafter, we came together as parents. Essentially, they put all the squeaky wheels in a room, and many of us are here that have been here from the very beginning. And they essentially tried to control the narrative. They said that they wanted to help us and that they wanted to fix what caused Rio's death, but we were soon told within the walls of Elkhart schools that we are not allowed to say abuse, and if we keep saying the word abuse, they're not going to work with us anymore. So we said, fine, we're out. And we went to the state. So the reason we went to the state is because our local schools tried to placate us and silence us into their narratives, which we would not allow to happen because the truth of what our children are living has to be spoken. And so we took to the State House in 23, and we were able to testify. 5 of us mothers, some of us here today, we were able to testify and pass legislation with our language, House Bill 1483, that requires schools to document the bullying and abuse of our children. Why in 2023 did a group of parents have to make that legislation? These are the institutions that we're entrusting with our children. And I don't know if you've ever pulled your child's student record, but when you pull it and you see that there's things there like they're not sitting in their seat, they are running in the hallway, but there's not things there of getting slapped in the head and told to kill yourself every day when it's being reported, right? So they're documenting these minor incidents, but not documenting the abuse and bullying of our children. And we can't lose the truth of what is happening, which is abuse. We say the word bully, and it almost loses its meaning because everybody thinks that that's like, oh, Timmy has a messed up haircut. It's went way beyond that, y'all. Abuse is the verbal, emotional, psychological, physical, sexual, sometimes cyber abuse of children by children on other children. It's still abuse, no matter what you call it. But there's this dismissiveness to it that keeps happening. And so, as Gabby just shared, while this law was passed in 2023, we've been monitoring it for the last 3 years, and schools are not documenting appropriately. If you go to in.gov, that's the other flyer here, it says, it's the red one, it says Indiana State Bullying Data Link. I encourage you to look up all of our local schools. It breaks it down by district and then by specific school. And every single person that has done this has been floored, because we have hundreds of schools across the state still reporting 0 instances of bullying, which we know is not possible, or minimal instances of bullying. And so it's important for us to be educated in this manner. And one thing that's alarming about the data is that this data came out a year ago, y'all. This presentation that we're playing for you guys, our community leaders that oversaw this grant and learned about the truth that's happening to Elkhart children, they've been sitting on this data for over a year. It took, again, us as parents coming together. We initially did a community child safety panel and had that at Tolson in May. We did another Spanish community meeting in June on this data, and we packed both places. Parents showing up to learn the truth. And parents are the ones bringing the truth of our county to this platform. And there's a reason we have these local activists here tonight recording live and doing this, because the Elkhart Truth is the only news here that I know of. Is there any other news stations here? I'm just curious. I don't want to leave anybody out.
You're making history. You don't even know.
So that speaks volumes, y'all, because I want to share that our local news was present for both of those community meetings, the one at Tolson and the one at Garden View. They stayed for the whole thing. And when we went through this presentation, we went through it slide by slide together. You know, none of those news stations that were present reported on this at all? How? How? And how is it that the leaders of our community have been sitting on this data for a year and they haven't said, all hands on deck, y'all? The children are screaming and they're not well. And now we have evidence as to why. Why are we not bringing that to community? Why are we not bringing that to parents? This should have been screamed from the rooftops, y'all. And all of the mayors know. I want to share that. So the source who ran this data in this project, they tried to do a mayor panel and get all the mayors together to discuss this data. None of them responded. All 7 superintendents were invited to participate and be a part of this data. None of them responded from all 7 school districts. I was actually told that only 1 school official responded, and it was a principal from Middlebury Schools. Not a single other school staff participated in this, and they were all invited to be at the table. So when Tiana questioned Dr. Huff, the superintendent of Elkhart Schools at the time, about this data, he got to play dumb in front of everybody in the room and said he didn't know what we were talking about. But yet he was invited to be at the table. And the majority of the referrals putting children in juvenile detention are coming from Elkhart schools, so why were they not at the table? And it's been a year, and they're still not at the table. And it's important to understand, as Tiana shared, the intention of this data. Elkhart County was only one of 2 counties. We have 92 counties in the state of Indiana. We were only one of 2 that got this grant. This is evidence on a platter. And the intention is, once you find out the truth, how do we fix it? But what did our leaders do? They said, shut that shit down. Real talk. Our prosecutor, our leaders, they want this data to go away. And we have folks from the inside coming to us on the outside as parents, begging us as parents to not let them kill this truth because they are trying to bury it instead of address it. When they learn how biased and abusive this system is, instead of sharing it with the public, instead of looking at actual implementation of a plan to address these disparities, they are trying to bury it in our community. And that has to be understood. And so with that, y'all, I think it's important. We hear a lot of for instances, but don't have like real life examples that are often helpful. And so tonight we had planned on a couple speakers, and because of their circumstances, they didn't feel that they could come, but gave me permission to share some of their stories with y'all. And so I think it's important just to give you guys a couple of examples of what this looks like. And with that, there's so much here, y'all. This morning, I was on the phone with a mother who I've been working with since March. Her son is a 13-year-old boy who had no behavioral issues at all. From kindergarten until 6th grade, not a single behavioral incident documented in his student record. After 1 year at an Elkhart middle school, his record was completely destroyed. He had over 26 behavioral incidents that were nonsense, to be frank. To read the behavioral incidents, he was yawning too loudly. He coughed too loudly. He blew his nose too loudly. I'm not even making this up, y'all. Yes?
When you say Elkhart, are you ever referring to Elkhart County, or are you always referring to the Elkhart school systems?
Elkhart County is the data. So that's the whole, the data is from all 7 districts. It's from the entire county. This specific situation I'm referencing is Elkhart schools. And so what's concerning about this, y'all, is we started this process of trying to have this child's record reviewed back in March. It was completely ignored by the administration, and so then we had to do our own research and request what's called a FERPA hearing. So that's within our rights to request, where we can review our children's record and dispute anything we don't agree with. So I was able to do this with this mother. And the attorney through Elkhart Schools shared this is only the 2nd FERPA hearing he's done in 20 years. So think about what our children's student records actually look like, right? So in this meeting, they determined that the majority of the student record was inappropriate. The language was inappropriate, it was derogatory, it was biased, there was discrimination, you could read through it all. This child was actually targeted by a teacher. 90% of those disciplinary referrals were from the same teacher. And they actually admitted in our meeting with administration that there was a power struggle between the teacher and the child. It takes 2 people to have a power struggle. So why is this adult having a power struggle with a 13-year-old? And why is his student record now destroyed, admittedly by a teacher that you were saying is dysregulated because her classroom is too full, which was admitted? So now, this child that has his mental health destroyed after a year at this middle school, this mother in distress, she doesn't know where her child's even going to go to school this week, okay? So even though we went through that FERPA hearing and they said they would change his student record, the damage was already done. Because when mom tried to put in the transfer to another district, it was denied because of that student record. And so these are the things that label our children and really pigeonhole them into these systems that are abusive instead of there being actual accountability and resolution. And so the mom had every intention to come here and speak tonight and is literally in distress because she doesn't know where her son's going to go to school this week. He's in complete limbo because of their failures, because of their negligence, right? And so just another example that I want to share, another family, not from an Elkhart community school, but I worked with a mother last year whose child went to Fairfield Community Schools. And her son is 16 years old, one of the only mixed children in a very white school. This child was attacked by a 60-year-old white teacher, put in a headlock, taken to the ground, had an extension cord wrapped around his ankles, and drug across the classroom. Fairfield has completely covered this up. Mom has spoken at many board meetings, so this is, I'm doing a podcast on this, which will be part of this, and we're gonna link the board meetings, so you guys can see on your own, but the district has completely covered it up. One scary piece of this is that Fairfield has their own internal police. That has complicated things even more, because mom has not even been given access to the police report. They're refusing to give her child's educational records. They're saying that there's no record of the incident at all, even though DCS was involved, a thorough investigation was done. And we actually had to have 2 DCS investigations done because the first one said, yeah, there's abuse here, but I'm not gonna do anything about it. And we were like, again, if this were us, right? Let me put my kid in a headlock, tie him up with an extension cord and drag him around. DCS is gonna be at my door and I'm gonna have a substantiated case and my kid's gonna be removed, okay? But this is happening in a school environment, and the power that lies there to suppress this kind of truth and suppress this information is happening within these districts, and we don't know unless we find each other. We don't know unless we're in coalition. We don't know unless we contact each other as parents, because they silence us one by one by one. Another incident that I want to share, because this is happening at a magnitude that people don't realize, is another parent that's actually here tonight that asked to be remain anonymous because of the context of this. Her daughter was molested at school by a child that was expelled from another district, and none of it was documented. So he came into our district and molested 3 little girls in his classroom within the first month of him being there. The teacher did not report it to DCS as she should have, because we're all mandated reporters in Indiana. Instead, she pulled mom aside and said, hey, something happened in my classroom with your daughter. You should talk to her when you get home. So mom talked to her daughter, found out she was fully molested by this boy, and that 2 other little girls were molested by this boy as well. Mom then, of course, contacts the school, incredibly upset, if you can imagine. They said, this child came in from another district. We have no information on him. I don't know what to tell you. So mom does her own investigation, finds out what district he came from, called that district, thankfully got the social worker who admitted on record that he was expelled for molesting children there. So again, this school district knew that this child was sexually abusive, aggressive to other children. Had that been documented, that child could have had an appropriate safety plan and all of our children could have been protected. But because these schools are more concerned with liability than our children's safety, they remain at risk because of this. The data shows it, our lived experiences show it, and so that's why it's important for us to find each other and have these conversations, because these are real situations that are happening that unless we come together, nobody knows. And so, I could give you guys so many more stories. Like truly, I mean, so many. I mean, all of us here have a story. But beyond, when you become kind of the face of child safety and trying to protect children in this way, people find us. We get messages constantly. And when we post videos, the comments are, me too, me too, me too. I had to leave, I had to leave. But the problem with leaving, y'all, is that none of this gets changed when you just leave. Yes, protect your child. Do what you have to do. But then once you learn the truth, come back and fight with us for the kids that can't leave. Right? Because there are children that can't leave these systems. There are children that don't have the resources, families that don't have the resources, that, like this child I'm telling you about, he's stuck. He's in limbo between 2 districts because of this. No fault of his own. Admitted bias from the district, and yet this child is being punished, right? And he feels that way. He, the child, like our children know. They know. And with that, y'all, we trust the hearts and truth of our kids, and we have a lot of active youth in this movement, and we are incredibly grateful for that, because we are truly just extensions of their truth and of their voices. That's why we're here. And so I am incredibly grateful to welcome a local student. She's a high school student, and she's been a part of our work for a few years now, and she's going to be making a statement on behalf of students for this school year. So if everyone can welcome Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm a senior, and I'm going to be reading a speech from one of my friends who wasn't able to attend today. Okay. I've been with this program since freshman year, helped out through student government, and later reached out on my own and brought some friends in my club with me. As a high school student, sometimes school is not as safe as they put it on TV. Others get bullied, others are treated unfairly, and no one does anything to fight against it at school. Schools only care about what the sport and academics look like, so when people ask, the school looks good. For some kids, school is the only safe place they know as an escape from home and the outside world. But if our school aren't safe anymore, then what are they to do? Child safety in schools is super important because every student deserves to feel secure and protected. We can make schools safer by having clear rules against bullying and violence, training staff and parents to recognize the signs of bullying and when their child is being hurt, and how to respond to issues quickly, and creating open spaces where students feel comfortable sharing their concerns. Encouraging kindness, respect, and teamwork among students. It also helps to build a positive environment. Plus, involving students in safety efforts and making sure everyone knows where to get help can make a big difference in keeping all schools safe. So, as a senior going into my last year of high school, do I feel safe to go? No. With what people to support me there. This group shows me and shows kids that there are people out there fighting for us to keep us safe and keep us protected, and I'm glad to have these people behind us, behind me.
In the voice of our youth, y'all, do you feel safe? No. Right? We have to lean into that truth in order to change it. And so before we close out the evening, I wanted to open the space for questions for anyone that has spoke. If you guys have any questions at all, comments, is that how this works?
Elkhart, do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Elkhart Truth?
For our first press conference, do you have any questions, Fred?
Did you need anything clarified for your story?
Put you on the spot.
Yeah.
You can think on it.
Yeah, can I think a little bit on it?
Yeah, of course. We just wanted to open the space.
Sure. I saw a little bit of the slides as they went through, but I was obviously listening to the speakers as well. Do you guys have a comprehensive plan of what you want to, as how to address this?
Yeah, so, we have so many things in motion, we really do. And so through multiple different organizations, there are different pieces of this. And so we have like an advocacy piece where those of us are able to volunteer. As I mentioned, I'm able to go with parents and help them navigate these systems when we know that there's abuse of power. We have that aspect to it. We also, through the Parent Coalition specifically, have a legislative piece, which is really important. So the legislative piece, like us being able to get the legislation passed, that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to organize and to gather testimony and make it to Indy and meet all these deadlines, right? And so we've been working on legislation at the state level since then, and we actually have a legislative framework that we are proposing next session. And we are working with Representative Dale Devon out of St. Joe County. And one of the reasons we're working with Dale is because our local legislators would not help us. We went to all of our local legislators and they pointed us back to the school board, and we were like, we've already been there. And so we actually had to work with legislators outside of our community in order to get this done. And so Dale from St. Joe County is actually authoring 3 of our bills this next session so we can bring this reform that's needed. And so this is a framework that we're willing to share with folks who are truly interested, because the framework, it literally bridges these identifiable gaps in child safety that we're discussing. Documentation, the miscommunication and lack of communication between DCS and schools. Our framework covers all of it, right? And as well as looking to change the state definition of bullying, which we have been trying to change for 4 years, because the state definition of bullying says bullying is only bullying if it's repetitive, which we know is not true. That's a scapegoat so they don't have to document. Because bullying can happen one time. Abuse can happen one time. That one time can cause a child to not want to go to school. And so to not document it because it's not repetitive is a massive loophole in our children's safety. And they know it. Like, you even talk to the superintendents, they want it. But then what we were told last session was a short session, so we only got one bill last session. And we were told that it would be heard and it was going through. 2 weeks later, we were told that the Department of Education was kicking back hard and didn't want it, and they killed the bill behind closed doors. They shouldn't even be allowed to do that. We've spoken with several educational law attorneys that explained that they're not a lobbying organization. They should not be able to kill bills behind closed doors, but that is literally the culture of the Indiana legislature right now, is that, like, they've gone rogue and they're doing whatever they want. And so this is the outcome of that, right? So there are so many different pieces of this. The Speak Our Truth project is another piece, and that's where we help people share their stories that want to share their stories. And so there's a lot of different ways to get involved in the work that we're doing based on what calls to you. I hope that long-winded answer answered you. Okay, sorry guys. Any other questions? Oh yes, Fred.
I just think it's important to acknowledge that she's running for office.
Yeah.
She showed up.
Okay.
But yeah, can I get a copy of those ones that you want passed?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, we need this collective support, right? There is power in numbers when we are up against systems that can kill things behind closed doors. We have to be loud enough and big enough that they don't have the capacity to do that. You know, last year when they did this, we had 15 parents on deck ready to testify. If you go to these, if you ever even watch, the legislative session, there's lucky to be 2 or 3 people, and you can tell they're like plants, right? We had 15 parents with testimony to back this. Like, again, we have the evidence, we have the stories, but it needs to get before the committee. So we need that pressure to say, no, we will put our children first. Any other questions, friends? Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Okay.
This is not, we're not just looking at the district level, like the people in administration. Our principals, our teachers, they'll be like, that's above my pay grade, but they are absolutely a part of this. They are working directly with our children. Do not let them tell you that this is above their pay grade. Because they are the ones who are sitting in your classroom with your child. So if they say, I don't have anything to do with that, that's a problem. They should absolutely have something to do with it, because they are working with your kid. You are trusting them with your child. I just got told today by a principal that they might not be able to keep my student because he's a transfer student, because of all of the stuff that's going on in the district.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And I was just gonna add, or just say that you are speaking exactly to what the research says. John Hattie, that name I spoke to, the number 2 influencer of achievement, and achievement is just not academics. Achievement is the well-being of children, is teachers' expectations.
Yep.
Teachers' expectations. The number 2. So you are 129% correct that we hold teachers and the institution accountable to do better.
Yeah, and it is really important to hone in on that and to know that we are entrusting all of these people with our children, right? And so that is a scary piece of this, to be like, oh, I'm supposed to entrust you with my child's life, when we have this level of evidence and abuse of power that is happening. I do want to add on to that, because a lot of times people try and misconstrue and be divisive as far as this, like, parent versus school or parent versus teacher. That is nonsense.
Yes.
It is absolute nonsense. And I want to be very clear that this is not a public schools issue. This is a child safety issue. And that these charter and voucher schools they don't solve a damn thing. They actually perpetuate the abuse, and that's from lived experience. Over half the parents I work with are from charter and private schools that are dealing with this, because actually I would say they're almost more abusive. Because if you go to a charter or private school and you even try and pull your child's student record, they lawyer up on you immediately. I went with mothers trying to just pull their child's student record, and I got the Catholic diocese in my inbox from Fort Wayne because they won't talk to the parent. So again, the charter voucher whole thing that Indiana's on does not solve any of this. But yet when you go to your legislators, literally what we're told is homeschool them, or you have the choice now, you have the voucher now, just move them. That doesn't solve shit. We have just as many issues with voucher, charter, private as we do with public. It's not getting to the root, and that's important to understand, because immediately people want to attack public education. It's across the board. And that's what's important for Indiana to understand, that they have put billions of our dollars into this voucher, charter, private, whatever they're running, and it does not solve any of this at all. All that money for what? To cherry pick kids? Real talk, what's happening? Because that's lived experience. I'm a social worker. That's what I've witnessed for over a decade. Like, that's lived experience. And so, yeah, y'all, there's a lot here to unpack. This will be the first of many. We want to keep doing this because it's important for us to bring the truth and information to the public, to our leaders, to the community, when the folks that should don't. And so, did anything come to you, friend, before we close out?
What's your message to administrators, teachers that feel like they're powerless, that want to help and change the system?
That's a great question. So he asked, like, what's a message to teachers and administrators that want to help? And those folks reach out to us all the time. My inbox is actually full of people working in these systems saying, hey, I work here, I can't talk, but, right? Our message to them is to document themselves, right? Like, document the truth of what is happening themselves. So one of the teachers that was actually going to come and speak tonight but had her child's back to school night, she actually left teaching because of this exact situation. She was witnessing a child be horribly bullied in her school, and it was being reported and nothing was happening, and he was starting to have suicidal ideation. So then she intervened. She then became the target of the administration and was pushed out of the school for trying to protect that child. And we actually did a podcast together that we'll be sharing within the next month, so you'll get to hear this firsthand from her. But this is very real. And so we all have that decision to make. Again, I've been a social worker. I've worked for DCS. I've done contract work for DCS. I've worked alongside these institutions, and we all have to look ourselves in the mirror at the end of every day. And so there is a way to go about this, and it will take teachers and administrators that know this is wrong to stand up for what is right. And that is our message to them, is to speak the truth.
I'm just curious, and when we talked a while back, I talked to Rod Robertson, and he said basically it was not in his wheelhouse. And I think it's really important that, I know there's someone that possibly run for mayor that was present in this parent coalition. And as soon as I threatened him that I would call or talk, he called me within like 2 hours. I went to school with him, I don't care. So this isn't about friendships, but I'm just curious about that going forward, like mayor in Elkhart. What can they do? Can they actually it'll change things? Can they talk to people? Yes. Can they investigate things? Yes. Do they have that? Can they do that?
Yes. In other counties, we've been organizing now, like we said, for about 4 years, so we're connected to other parent coalition groups like this across the state. And in other communities, they have booted their mayor. They have booted their prosecutor because of these exact situations, and we have the power to do that. Because we did, after Rio died, we took this to the mayor and the city council, and they signed a resolution that they would be in support of anything that we would do, and now we can barely get them to post an event on 311 without giving us shit. Nor have they showed up for anything in almost 2 years. And so one thing that's important, y'all, and I'm so glad you brought this up, because essentially the mayor said, like, this isn't my wheelhouse. The city council said, this isn't my wheelhouse, but mind you, half the city council works for the school system, so there's a huge conflict of interest there, y'all.
The SROs are making disciplined decisions.
Yeah, the SROs, the student resource officers, are making these decisions as well, which is scary, because they're policing our children, right? They're not protecting our children, they're policing our children. There's a difference, and that's how this has happened, is because they're policing our children. There are good officers. We've met with them, and there are some that have told us, I didn't sign up to arrest kids. We've actually have officers confide in us and say, I've worked in other areas. Elkhart is arresting kids like I've never seen. Like, it's literally known. And one thing that's important to point out as well is that other school districts do not use the police in this manner. So like Fairfield that I mentioned, they have their own internal police. They handle things internally, so children from Fairfield aren't going into the juvenile system. Elkhart Community Schools children are, because they're using the police in response to behaviors when they should be having resources, because all behaviors are communication, whether we like it or not. And one thing that Lakia, who she presented this data at both meetings that we had, that she pointed out, is that a juvenile act is a delinquent act, not a criminal act. Elkhart County is making it a criminal act. That is where the power lies, and it's important for us to understand that. And so another piece of this, when we had the Tolson meeting, where we went over this data in great detail, the mayor was invited and actually said that he had another event and he couldn't make it. So we're curious, what's that event? Well, that event was him and the superintendent from Jimtown meeting at the Learner to talk about workforce development in our schools. So let me get this right. It's not in your wheelhouse to protect our children, but it's in your wheelhouse to talk about our children being your laborers. And that is something that you will find as above, so below. Every call that I have been on at a state level for the last 2 years, the only thing they talk about in reference to our children is this damn workforce. You will not have a workforce, just like you don't now, if you don't take care of our children. Unhealthy children become unhealthy adults. So unless you address this here, you won't have a workforce. But all they are focused on is our children being in this workforce. Make it make sense. So it's not in your wheelhouse to show up and learn about the school to prison pipeline that you're pumping out, which, mind you, creates the workforce that they want. Because who's going to be cheap labor? Whose children are going to be cheap labor in this rich county of Elkhart? We are one of the wealthiest counties in this state, y'all. There is so much money here. Right across the way, the Elkhart Community Foundation has billions of dollars that it can only invest in Elkhart children, yet this is the truth of our children. Make it make sense. Our leaders, some of them, are full of shit. Period. Because it is all within their wheelhouse to protect our children and not just focus on them being part of a workforce. If you focus on their safety and well-being, you will have a flourishing workforce. But if you're not willing to do that and only show up for capitalism and profits, then guess what? This is what you get. And it will take all of us to shift this, because this culture has been created. This is intentional, as above, so below. Governor Braun is bragging his ass off that we have a $4 billion surplus in this state right now, at the cost from whom? Where did that surplus come from? Where? Because we proposed legislation 2 years ago that they told us could not go through because Medicaid blew the budget by $2 billion and we couldn't put through legislation that would protect our children. Well, now we got a $4 billion surplus, so let's go. Real talk, let's go. That's where the money needs to be invested. So whether you're running or you're in office, that you invest in our children, you invest in our future. It's quite simple. You don't have to step back too far to understand that. And so we need leaders that actually do, and not ones that placate for their own bottom line and agenda.
Ones that actually care.
Yes.
Like have the heart and not just in there for the picture and, oh, I'm good, I'm gonna get this way. No, come do your work, come what you came to the office for. Don't just take your picture and collect your $200 and go. We put you in there for a reason. You need to step up for these because everybody preaches the kids are our future, blah, 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 blah. From the churches to the schools to everybody. How are they our future if, while we've got the parents in there working 40 plus hours, where are our kids at? And everything costs how much for the kids to do it? And there's families with multiple kids? Come on now. No, I don't want to hear it. It's bullshit, flat out bullshit.
Yeah, we'll call bullshit all day, y'all. It's our press conference. So, all right, y'all. So with that, I do want to end with an amazing activist, Miss Leatra Scott, who's going to take us home and share how y'all can get involved in this movement.
All right, good evening, everyone. Like she said, my name is Leatra Scott. I am a child and parent and teacher advocate, as well as a mother of 3 daughters. 2 of my daughters are right here. I know there's been a lot of information given out today, a lot of troubling information as well. But at the end of the day, we're not only an organization that's going to point out these identifiable gaps, we are going to come with a resolution. And so to point to your question, what's the resolution? Everybody can pick up this call to action flyer. If you take a look at this call to action flyer, if you have not already signed, you can scan the QR code, the one that says sign here, and you can individually sign to our Indiana Child Safety Campaign petition. It's on change.org. Now these links are also available online as well. And together we are calling upon Indiana to become the first state in the nation to make child safety the highest legislative and budgetary priority across every branch of the government. So our vision is very clear. We want every elected official to make child safety a priority. Second, Indiana provides sufficient funding and resources to protect every child in our schools, community, and state systems. And third, the Indiana General Assembly passes legislation that closes systemic child safety gaps across education, DCS, healthcare and Medicare, mental health services, and juvenile and family courts. Now, in addition to individually signing, dozens of Indiana businesses and organizations have already signed the Community Partnership, that's that middle QR code there, the Community Partnership Agreement. If you represent a business or an organization that supports this mission, please scan this QR code that marked partnership. And tonight, she had touched on it, but we are proud to launch our Speak Up Indiana, an essential part of the Indiana Child Safety Campaign. Speak Up Indiana is a statewide parent and community-led community witness and accountability project. It was created to amplify the voices and lived experiences of Indiana's children, youth, and families. It provides a space for people to share their experiences with schools, DCS, juvenile and family courts, healthcare and Medicare, mental health services, law enforcement, and other systems that have significantly affected child safety well-being in our futures. Its purpose is simple: to listen, to witness, to document, and to learn. By gathering lived experiences from across Indiana, Speak Up will help us identify systemic patterns, understand how child-serving systems function in practice, amplify voices that might otherwise go unheard, and inform education, advocacy, organizing, and reform. Now, data tells us part of the story, but lived experiences that helps us understand what this data means and what must be changed. Speak Up is not a crisis line. We're not a law enforcement agency. We're not legal services. We're not an investigative body. or official reporting channel. It is a grassroots community accountability effort grounded in the belief that the people most affected by our systems must have a meaningful voice in order to improve them. Submissions may be anonymous through the Speak Up Indiana QR code on the flyers and through the links shared online. There are several ways that you can take action tonight. Again, you can sign the Indiana Child Safety Campaign. You can partner with the campaign as a business or organization. You can speak up by sharing your experiences through our Speak Up Indiana. Join our frontline efforts by registering at tonight's table right over there or visiting our speakourtruthproject.com. And you can share these opportunities throughout our community. It will take all of us standing together in solidarity to protect our children and to create lasting change across Indiana. Sign, partner, speak up, join us, share. Together we can make Indiana child safety a high priority. Finally, please save this date for our next Indiana Child Safety Campaign Back to School virtual gathering. Is on Thursday, August the 27th. I see everyone getting out their calendars. August the 27th.
It's on the back of the campaign flyer.
It is also on the back of this campaign flyer right here. So flyers are available tonight and details are posted on our Facebook. If you haven't already went to follow, please go follow Speak Our Truth and the Parent Coalition for Child Safety. As we continue to share important local and statewide child safety updates, resources, opportunities, and actions throughout the school year. Thank you all for coming. Did you want to say anything else? She gonna get up here and blow this mic up. She gets passionate, y'all.
Look, she ain't said enough cuss words. She got something.
Right. You just below. But no, that's Mama Bear over there, and we are all very, very passionate. I know you can feel it. Thank you all. It takes all of us together. You all have a great night. And just August the 27th. We'll see you August the 27th. Thank you again.